On March 8, 2014, exactly 41 minutes after midnight, 227 passengers took off from Kuala Lumpur toward Beijing. It was a routine flight for everyone on board, except this normal flight was about to become the biggest mystery in modern aviation. The main pilot that night was Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah. Beside him was First Officer Fariq Hamid, only 27 at the time, but already trusted. Passengers from all over the world settled in for their 6-hour flight, not knowing it would end much sooner. 20 minutes after takeoff, the flight reached its cruising altitude. Air traffic control handed the plane over to Vietnam. That was also the moment when the captain checked in one last time, saying, "Good night, Malaysian 370. But as the flight crossed toward Vietnamese airspace, something started to feel wrong. Not only did the crew fail to check in even once, but no one answered when controllers tried calling them. 20 minutes later, the aircraft's transponder shut off, and MH370 simply vanished from civilian radar. At first, nobody panicked. Airlines lose transponder signals all the time, usually because of something boring like a glitch, right? But this wasn't a glitch. This was the beginning of a real nightmare. While civilian radar showed nothing, military radar quietly kept watching, and what it saw was shocking. The plane made a sharp left turn back toward Malaysia. It flew over Penang. Then it headed out over the Strait of Malacca toward the Andaman Sea. In this moment, everyone realized that something was wrong, except no one knew what it actually was. Even though the plane disappeared from radar, its satellite system kept sending tiny digital pings, basically automatic check-ins to the Inmarsat network. And now comes the strangest, most chilling part of this whole mystery. These pings continued for almost 7 hours after MH370 vanished from the screens. And that was the last confirmed trace of MH370. In the next few days after the disappearance, everything moved fast. But almost everything moved in the wrong direction. Search teams rushed into the South China Sea, convinced that MH370 had gone down somewhere between Malaysia and Vietnam. Dozens of planes and ships scanned the water, but they found nothing. At this point, the public entered a kind of collective shock. How can a Boeing 777, a giant, modern aircraft with 2 engines, 2 pilots, and hundreds of systems, just disappear? Planes don't do magic tricks. They don't vanish. Except here, one just did. Day after day, officials gave updates that only made things more confusing. One country said the plane turned back. Another said it didn't. Satellite imagery kept showing possible debris, which turned out to be waves and clouds. Families demanded answers, but for investigators, everything looked like they were chasing a ghost across the map. But then they combined the military radar data with the satellite signals and realized the plane had been heading toward the Indian Ocean. So, in the weeks that followed, investigators discovered 2 possible flight paths. First, a northern corridor stretching toward Central Asia. Second, a southern corridor heading deep into the Indian Ocean. The northern option was quickly ruled out. Simply put, there were too many borders for this flight to pass through unnoticed. And, on the other hand, the southern path was wide open and quiet. So, the search shifted there. And what followed was the largest underwater hunt in human history. Australia, Malaysia, China, the US, the UK, and other countries teamed up. Basically, everyone who had a ship, a drone, or a sonar system joined in. They scanned 120,000 square kilometers of seafloor. That's the size of a small country. But the conditions during these searches were brutal. Months of scanning produced the same result over and over again. Nothing. At one point, a possible signal was detected, something like short pulses that sounded like they might be the black box pingers. The world held its breath. but further analysis later dismissed those signals as nothing more than a false alarm. While the ocean search dragged on with zero results, something unexpected happened on land. In 2015, a flaperon washed up on Reunion Island, and over the next year, more pieces appeared on beaches in Madagascar, Mozambique, and South Africa. Around 33 pieces were eventually found, and about 20 of them were considered highly likely to belong to the aircraft. However, interpretations of the debris were divided. Some experts saw signs of a high-speed impact. Others believed it suggested a more controlled ditching. Still, these discoveries didn't help pinpoint the crash site. Meanwhile, search ships kept pushing on. Some days, they found literal shipwrecks from the 1800s, but not the plane everyone was looking for. By early 2017, after 3 years of non-stop searching, the truth became impossible to ignore. There was not a single confirmed piece of the aircraft found in the search zone. And in January 2017, the official hunt for MH370 was suspended. Simply, there was nothing left to search. By 2018, the world had basically run out of options. Except one. A private company called Ocean Infinity stepped in and said, "We'll search again, and if we don't find anything, you don't pay us." They brought in the best underwater technology available. Autonomous drones that could scan huge areas faster and deeper than anything used before. And they didn't waste time. In just a few months, Ocean Infinity covered 112,000 square kilometers, almost as much as the original 3-year search. But again, nothing. And here's the strange part. This was one of the most advanced ocean mapping missions ever done. If MH370 was sitting in that zone, they should have seen it, right? Well, now we can safely say that something about this flight is not normal. The most widely discussed theory among investigators focuses on Captain Zahari. According to some reports, he was dealing with personal stress and even problems in his marriage. Of course, nothing here is proven, but investigators did find something unusual. His home flight simulator contained a route strikingly similar to the path MH370 is believed to have taken into the southern Indian Ocean. The next scenario is the simplest one, and honestly, sometimes simple wins. It proposes that something happened early in the flight that incapacitated everyone on board, something like a sudden loss of cabin pressure. The plane would then have continued on autopilot for hours until the fuel was gone. The next theory is the UFO theory. Look, it wouldn't be the internet without this one. A viral video once claimed to show MH370 being taken by a glowing object. Authorities later claimed that the footage was fake, but since we still don't have a real explanation, we can't exactly dismiss this theory entirely, right? Fast forward to 2025, and the story of MH370 still refuses to rest. Malaysia approves a brand new, no-find, no-fee contract worth $70 million. The deal is the same as before. Ocean Infinity only gets paid if they actually find the plane. This time, Ocean Infinity identifies a fresh 5,800 square mile search zone. The company says they're coming back with upgraded autonomous submarines, better mapping systems, and a clearer idea of where previous searches might have missed. Basically, version 2.0 of the hunt. But in April, the mission hit a wall because of the terrible weather, and the search was paused. Except, the story isn't over. Malaysia confirms the hunt will resume, this time as a 55-day operation. They'll go in, scan specific high-probability zones, pull back when the weather turns bad, then return when conditions calm down. Let's just hope that this time, we don't end up with more questions than answers.